Hello everyone. This is a specially recorded program for Huawei International Sri Lanka. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to do this task. Before start, I just want to share a story, one of my experiences. Many years ago, I was also like you all working in the corporate sector. As far as I can remember, that was the health and safety day where we have invited to a keynote speaker to talk about workplace stress. He was highly qualified to do the task. So he came and he started his speech. The first 5 minutes, he was talking about the consequences of workplace stress. We were okay with that. Second 5 minutes, the same thing. The third 5 minutes, the same thing. And we started feeling stressed about listening speech. And we started looking at our wristwatches and thinking that when he is going to finish this talk. And that day, he consumed whole full 1 hour. And at that day, we left the auditorium with highly stressed minds. I don't want to do it today. I want to make sure that at the end of this session, you will leave this talk with having understood the nature of the stress free mind. So, in order to do that, let's make this a kind of an experiential learning session. So, there are various activities with which that you can engage with me so that you can feel the true nature of the stress free mindset. So, with that, let's start. So, the topic is say no to stress, achieve peak performance with mindfulness practice. So, before we start, I just want to tell you that the content of my talk, it's mainly three things. The first thing is that what is stress and how do we feel about, pretty much we all know about this thing. And the second thing is that how can we use mindfulness as a tool to manage our stress? And then lastly, how do we feel that when we are not under stress, or the nature of the stress free mindset? So, with that, let's move into the first thing in our agenda. We all know that the workplace stress is one of the biggest health burdens going to be in the world. Forget about COVID. The COVID is something that it's an infectious disease, but the stress is not like that. It's actually spreading everywhere in the world, and you all know that the negative aspects of stress, the diseases and all these things, which I'm not going to talk about. But one of the things I just want to share with you all is that the stress is highly personalized. Now, for example, I started reading this book, which is kind of a handbook on stress. So there are 5 volumes. So I started reading the first volume while preparing for this talk. So one of my friends, having seen this, told me that he started feeling stress by seeing this book, which is not the case for me because I love reading. So therefore, stress is highly personalized. Now, this is there are two photographs here. The first photograph is a police officer attending to the paperwork. And the second picture is a group of police officers who are chasing a criminal or attending to some sort of high risk task. So research shows that the first task, that means the attending to a paperwork for a policeman, is more stressful than chasing a criminal, etc. So therefore, it's highly personalized. It depends on person to person, and what triggers for me is totally different to someone else. On the other hand, you can say that it is mind-made. For example, if you consider a disease like COVID-19, it is actually an infectious disease, and it is we acquired it from a foreign agent. But whereas the stress, it's actually mind-made in order to respond to an external stimulation. So if it is mind-made, my question is that can it be measured? And if it is so, is there a benefit of measuring the stress? Yes, it can be measured. Now, there are a few tools that has been developed in the world. So one of the most important tool that is called perceived stress scale. The short term is PSS. Now, this is a simple tool with 14 questions where you have to rate each and every response in a scale from 0 to 4. For example, one of the questions, the third question is, in the last month, how often have you felt nervous and stressed? So you can rate it 0 or 1, 2, 3, or 4. The higher, very often, the fourth is very often, and 0 is never. So like that, when you rate each and every response, there will be a final mark that you will get, and that is the status of your perceived stress. What do you mean by perceived stress? The perceived stress is the way what you feel about what you feel. For example, let's consider a situation where you have an appointment to meet a dentist. For most of the people, when the time that they started made the appointment itself, they started feeling the pain, right? So that is perceived stress. So I have actually used this tool and assessed the stress of group of people, which is shown in this graph. So it's nearly the status of stress of 31 people. So you can see that people experience the perceived stress at different level, different degrees. Now here you can see the lowest being 19. So these three individuals, their total score is 19. And then there's an individual with 46 who have had the highest level of stress. So you can see it's a kind of a range which goes from 0 to 60. Now, one of the things that this individual can do is that his stress level is 46, but he can set a goal to reduce his stress into 90. So that's the most important of this scale, where you can assess your status and then you can make actions to reduce your status of stress. If you really want, you can make it 0. So what I want to do now is that to tell you that what would happen if you make that perceived stress 0. You can make it. Right? So when you don't have stress, you are happy and you can achieve the status called peak performance. And that is the concept called corporate athletes. If you're really, really, really stress free, you can do a lot. And not only that, your capacity goes up, your social interconnectedness goes up, and even the high order functions like your creativity, imagination, and all these things will be improved. Now, there are so many techniques with which you can manage stress. For example, the motivational talk, the counseling, the treatments, etc., etc. But among them, the concept called mindfulness is becoming very, very important and very, very practical tool, as you can see in this slide, where the Harvard Medical School has published so much of research to showcase that the benefits of mindfulness. Basically, they have reported that it improves the quality of life. Now, apart from that, this is a publication in the journal called Forbes, the Human Resource Council, where they say that the employees who practice mindfulness actually gain 62 minutes of productivity. So that is an improvement of the productivity, as well as go along, go to bed with less stress, less pain, and better sleep. So around the world, there are a lot of experiments and research conducted to assess the impact of mindfulness on work, particularly stress, workplace stress, particularly workplace stress, where they have shown significantly positive results. So I also have designed a study or a module for people to practice mindfulness in a structured way, as shown in this picture. It's a kind of an 8-week module, and there are 8 modules for each week. And the end objective of this module is mainly to create a sustainable neurobiological shift where you will be mindful, you will gain the ability to be mindful throughout the day, and you may be able to sustain it. So I have actually assessed the stress level before the program and after the program. So I recruited a group of individuals where this is the place that they practice mindfulness with me. So the time invested for the program is just 1 hour per week. So the whole program was 10-hour practice with me. So every week they practice mindfulness 1 hour with me. Now I have developed into an online program, and I have assessed their stress level before the program and after the program. And you can see these 2 bars, there is a significant reduction of the stress level. It is 28% reduction in the perceived stress at the end of the program. And you can further reduce this as you continue to practice mindfulness. So therefore, practice of mindfulness has been a kind of a proven formula to address the issue of stress. Now, with that, I just want to introduce you the concept of mindfulness, which is mainly in the Western context defined by Professor John Kabat-Zinn, where he's the first person to introduce mindfulness to the mainstream of medicine. Now, in a simple way, mindfulness is something that you maintain your mind always in the present moment, using your body as an anchor. For a beginner, you need an anchor, in this case, the body, to maintain your mind always in the present moment. If you really look at the nature of your mind, most of the time, if you do not attend to a particular task which requires very high level of attention, it wanders. And research says that at least 46% of the time that you let your mind wander and you don't know where it is. Now, have you seen there are people sometimes while they are walking alone, they smile or they talk to themselves. So that is mainly because of the huge inner chatter they have in their minds. And sometimes we also feel that. Now we feel like somebody is continuously talking in our mind. And for some people, they don't feel it. So what happens is that there are certain work that we do in an automatic way, or we can say autopilot mode, or a mechanical way. So we let those activities to happen, and we let our minds also to wander. Right? So for example, we may be walking and we may be thinking something else. Now, as a result of that, we train our minds not to be in the present moment or not to be with us. And that continues. And if we want to do some work, what happens is that we let that, for example, if you're drafting an email, so time to time you feel that your mind wanders here. So that is mainly the unmindfulness. So the mindfulness is the other way where we ensure and we train our mind to be with us all the time. Now, there are simple tools with which that we can practice mindfulness. Is one of the tools is that we call the Tibetan singing bowl. And then there's another concept that I want to introduce you, which is called mind jar. But what I want to tell you before me introducing all these things, there are three ways with which that we can easily practice mindfulness. The first thing is while attending to our day-to-day. The second thing is that we use various tools that I have already shown to you, something like this Tibetan singing bowl and mind jar, which I will explain to you later. And the third thing is the structured way of practicing mindfulness. So the third thing comprises of two things: mindful walking and mindful sitting. So before I explain you the first and second ways, I just want you to experience the true nature of the present moment with a very brief practice of mindfulness. So, as I told you, this the structured way of practice mindfulness comprises of two steps: the mindful walking and mindful sitting. So, I always encourage people to practice mindful walking at least 10 to 15 minutes before you start mindful sitting. So, how to practice mindful walking? As you see in this slide, you first of all you need to find a place or a walkway where you can walk at least the 30 to 50 steps is the best, but at least more than 10 steps. And then you what you need to do is that you keep your hands tight in front of you or back, and then you can look at maybe 1 or 2 meters, maybe at least 2 meters in front of you. Don't look at here and there, and then slowly start walking. And while walking, what you need to do is that you need to ensure that you are conscious of the way in which you feel your left, right, and the right leg. If it is so difficult for a beginner, you can slowly contemplate left, right, left, right, etc. But for a beginner, I mean, it happened to me that I was able to walk only 3 steps mindfully, and the fourth step I found my mind was wandering. I heard a bird singing, and I started wandering. But one particular time that you will get to know that you have been wandering, and that with that you can bring your attention back to your the next leg. So when you keep trying this, you will gain the ability to walk consciously at least for 10 steps. Now when you gain that status, you will be shifted into the next stage where you will feel that there is a gap between the left and the right. So contemplate that as well. So now you can see, you can say left, gap, right, gap, left, etc. You can slowly contemplate if it is so difficult to be conscious. And then again, if you continue to maintain your consciousness, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, you will be shifted into the next level where you feel that each and every step has 3 phases or segments: lifting up, moving forward, and placing. So you can contemplate that also. So lifting up, moving forward, placing. Again, the next leg, lifting up, moving forward, placing, etc. So in this way, you can practice mindfulness for 15 minutes, at least 15 minutes for your busy schedule, and then you can go to a mindful sitting. That's where you can choose. You can select whatever the sitting position: full lotus, half lotus, or even a chair. You can sit and practice mindfulness. So what we are going to do is, for next few minutes, we are going to practice mindful sitting, uh, maybe maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will move into the rest of the agenda. Now, in order to practice mindful sitting in an effective way, first of all, you need to sit like me sitting here in a very comfortable way. Keep your both legs touching the floor, and keep them in parallel, and keep your palms on your thighs, palms down, hands, palms down, and then keep your back straight but relaxed. And then slowly adjust your head and neck and find the most comfortable position to keep. Now, when you sit like this, you started feeling that you are relaxed and you are sitting here in a symmetrical way. So while sitting here, now we are trying to experience the present moment. So that means what is happening right now. So in order to do that, I invite you all to close your eyes slowly and gently. Now we are sitting here, closing our eyes, and just feel what you experience at this moment. See whether you can feel your pressure points, the way your legs are touching the floor, your hands, your weight on your chair, your back, and your head end. So these are various pressure points. So if you can feel your pressure points, that means you are in the present moment. Try to experience what else you can feel at this moment. See whether you can feel the rise and the fall of the abdomen after each and every breath, or the rhythmic movements of your body, or the beating of heart, or even pulse. Just experience them as a whole. So those are the metabolic activities happening right now, and you just observe them as an independent person. In other words, even if you think or if you don't think, your respiration will happen. So let them happen and you be the observer. Just watch all these things which are happening right now. Sometimes while you're observing what is happening right now, you may wonder, you may be thinking something past, or you may be something future, or maybe totally irrelevant thought, or there may be a stream of thoughts in your mind. So no sooner you spotted that there were thoughts in your mind, just note them and just be conscious of them. Do not try to suppress them, or do not let them to be proliferated, or do not entertain or enjoy. Instead of that, just be conscious of those thoughts as if you have been conscious of your various metabolic activities of your body. This is called choiceless awareness. Make no choice. Just experience them as they are. With that awareness, you will feel that your mind always comes to the present moment. When you note that you have been wandering, you will see that the stream of thoughts slowly subsides and you always come back to the present moment. So whenever your mind wanders, please apply the same. So we have nothing to do at this moment, just to observe the present moment. So let us enjoy having nothing to do at this moment. So we need to do this by ourselves. So I will stop guiding from this point onward, and let's experience the present moment by ourselves. but I will ring the bell time to time, which are reminders to be in the present moment. So let's start. Slowly open your eyes. Thank you very much. So that was a very brief sitting session. So you can use a kind of an audio track or some sort of guidance, which will really help you to practice mindful sitting. So my recommendation is that if you can find half an hour every day for 15 minutes for mindful walking and 15 minutes for mindful sitting, that will really, really, really help. Now, the next thing that I want to tell you is that now what would happen when you spend at least say every day half an hour to practice mindfulness? You will see that throughout the day that you will be able to maintain your mind in the present. Now, the nature of the mind is such that it always wanders. That's the nature of the mind. If your mind doesn't wander, that's strange. But what happens is that when you keep on practicing mindfulness, when you cultivate mindfulness, you will gain the ability where even though your mind wanders, it always comes back to the present moment. It is something like this. Now every day you go to your office. Now during these COVID days that you are working from home, but in most cases we go to work and then we come back home. So we come back home with a very happy feeling. So similarly, even though your mind wanders, when you keep on practicing mindfulness and cultivate the higher state, you reach the higher status, you feel that it goes, but it always comes back, and your mind always stays in the present moment. Now, what happens is that when your mind stays in the present moment, your wandering time reduces. Now, what causes stress? Now, what causes stress is basically the overthinking or our unnecessary thinking. Now, let's consider a situation where you get into a kind of a heated argument at your office. Maybe with someone, your colleague or your supervisor, or maybe someone else. So you had the argument, you felt quite uncomfortable, and that's all. But after maybe a few minutes later, you feel that you are regenerating in your mind, right? You are ruminating the thought. You are keep on thinking about it, and it goes like a vicious cycle. More you think, you add many elements to it, and you started feeling unhappy and uneasy. Now, when you go to bed at that day, you go to bed. with that thought in your mind. And the next day when you get up, that's the first thing that comes to your mind. But this time is slightly different. Now you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to office today, and if I meet that person individual again, how I'm going to explain the how I'm going to deal with him. Now your mind goes to the future as well. Now the past and the future. This is an incessant stream of thought which keeps going, and that is what is causing the stress. So the real situation is over, but still we are regenerating it again and again and again and again, and we feel the pain. So this is the unnecessary pain. So this is a perceived stress. This can be made zero if you maintain your mind always in the present. And the other most beautiful thing is that for a beginner, it's quite difficult to start practicing mindfulness. But with the practice, what will happen is that I'll give a good example. Most probably, you all can drive a vehicle, right? So you drive vehicles. But if you go back to your uh, training period, you have to think and do everything, right? So you have to think about the accelerator, you have to think about the change of the gear, and you have to think about the brake, all these things. But with the practice, you will be able to drive smoothly while talking to someone else or while listening to music or something like that. So what happens is that for the beginning, you need to put a little bit of effort, but then later you become more effort. It becomes a kind of an effortless activity. So same thing happens with the mindfulness as well. There is so much of research that they have shown that our minds contain nearly 12 billion neurons. And when we think and when we communicate, there are neural connections. And neural connections, they get connected in a way that is based on our thinking patterns also. And a lot of research that they have shown that when you continue to practice mindfulness, your neural network get rewired in a manner that you will be continue to be mindful throughout the day. So this is called neuroplasticity. So this is a scientific concept which I'm not going to explain, but I just want to share you one of the simple experiments where scientists have shown the benefits of mindfulness. So this is Professor Richard Davidson, where he designed a study where he brought the venerables who have been practicing in Tibetan to United States, one of his laboratories, and put them under functional MRI machines. So functional MRI machine can measure the specific structural and functional changes in the brain. So what he has found is it's kind of an amazing results where he found that as shown in this graph, so each and every green dot is a mindfulness practitioner. And what he has found is that, so in this axis, the duration of the mindfulness practice through their life, and then in this axis is the thickness of the left part of the prefrontal cortex. So in a nutshell, what he has found is that when you keep on practicing mindfulness in a structured way, in a proper way, it causes permanent structural and functional changes in the brain, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for almost all our higher order functions. What are our higher order functions? Our thinking, our ability to imagine, the mathematical skills, and almost all the things, rational thinking and everything. So that means there is an improvement of all these aspects. And apart from that, he has found that there are certain areas in our brain which deals with our emotions. Now, have you seen there are people who get, you know, we define them as quick-tempered people. They get angry very quickly. So there are specific areas called amygdala and hippocampus mainly deal with those things. So what scientists have found is that when you continue to practice mindfulness, these areas get restructured in a manner that we will be able to deal with our emotions in a very effective way. So it's called emotional literacy. We don't have much time to discuss all these things. So the benefits of mindfulness has scientifically proven. So what would happen is that when you continue to practice mindfulness in a structured way, you will be transformed into a situation where throughout the day, irrespective of the external disturbances and the environment, you will be able to maintain your mind always in the present moment. So in that context, you will not do the autopilot mode work. When you walk, you know that you are walking. When you talk, you know that you are talking. When you eat, you know that you are talking. So your level of accuracy, your productivity, the way you deal with the external people will totally change. So with that, I'll come back to the uh, first step, where how can we practice mindfulness while attending to our day-to-day activities, because for some people finding a half an hour to practice mindfulness may be quite challenging and difficult. So in that case, what you have to do is that we now, if you recall the day, the first thing we do is that no sooner we get up from the bed, we go to the washroom, or maybe washing our teeth, brushing our teeth, etc. So these are the activities we do with the very least level of attention. So one thing we can do is that now anyway we need to do all these things, and we used to think something else while attending to these things. Now you can change your behavior. What you can do is that while doing all these activities, you can be fully conscious. For example, when you're doing brushing, you can convert into a mindful brushing. So how do you do mindful brushing is that you need to be fully conscious of the taking the toothpaste into your brush, and then brushing the upper part, the lower part, the inner part, etc., etc. And when you do all these things, you will be able to maintain your mind throughout the brushing process. So that is mainly nearly to 1 to 2 minutes of mindfulness practice. And there are so many other examples that I can give you. Sometimes you may be walking from your car, you're walking to your car. So it may be even 7 to 8 steps, but you can walk those steps mindfully. And then you may be driving from home to office. You can switch off the radio and you can drive mindfully. And you can see that how peaceful is that driving. And you can be fully conscious of what you see around in the vicinity. And one day I was driving mindfully, and even I started hearing the tick tick sound of my watch. So despite all the other noises and disturbance around. So then when you come to office, you can go to your workstation mindfully, and you can now the most important thing is that generally for me, my computer, it takes at least one maybe 30 seconds to 40 seconds to start. What are you going to do this during that 40 or 30 seconds? Are you going to think, okay, when this computer is going to start, and no, you can watch your breath. Anyway, you can't do anything because the computer has to take, it takes that time. So for that 40 seconds, you can watch your breath and you can practice mindfulness. And then when the computer starts, you can start everything with a fresh mind. The other example is that you finish a meeting and then you may be walking to another meeting. So while you are walking from one meeting to the other, in general, what happens is that you may be preparing for the next meeting. That you have to prepare for all these things in advance. But what you can do is that you can walk that distance mindfully. When you go and sit in the meeting, others will also feel that. So like that, you can find number of ways in which that you can practice mindfulness every day. In that way, I'm pretty much sure that I can easily find at least 2 to 3 hours to practice mindfulness without investing a special time. And the last thing I just want to share with you is that use of simple tools to practice mindfulness. Now, this tool is called a Tibetan sitting board. Uh, so, how do we practice mindfulness using this tool? Is that I define them as micro meditation session, right? So now it's a kind of you can practice mindfulness with me. So it's a kind of a challenge for you all. So I'm making a noise with a very high tone, but it will be slowly fading away. And your challenge is to find the end of the sound. Right? So let's start. Another time. So more you practice mindfulness, more you're able to maintain your attention throughout that fading away sound. Now, the opposite of this, where the sound will start very slowly and then it increases and it will maintain. So your challenge is to identify the starting point and then maintain your consciousness throughout the sound. Let's start. So this is called Tibetan singing bowl, and I used to practice this. Maybe I work continuously for 90 minutes and then I practice this. So this gives me a kind of a refreshing start for the next activity. But there's a challenge with this. Now this is huge and you can't carry this all the time. But if you go to your iPhone and go to your app store or whatever the thing that you use, I will show it to you. You can easily download this app. That's where, just give me a moment, I will show you the app. Bear with me for 1 minute. Now in this, using this app, you can easily practice mindfulness. So this is this one. Yes, if you go to your maybe iPhone or Android phone, you can easily download this app and then you can have your own headset and then you can practice mindfulness. Right. So hope you can download that one. The other tool that I'm going to explain and use called this is called Mind Jar. Now, this is another tool with which you can practice mindfulness as well as you can experience or you can understand the core concept of mindfulness. Now, if you really look at this jar, this is transparent and so beautiful. So that is your mindful mind, right? But if I shake this vigorously like this, what happened? What would happen? Can you see that now it's not transparent, it's cloudy, and these glittering particles are everywhere. So that is your unmindful mind. So when you are unmindful, that maybe you are stressed, you are angry, whatever thing, your mind is like this, cloudy, and your thoughts are everywhere, and you don't know what I think. Now, in order to make this dark, cloudy liquid into very transparent liquid, I can do only two things. I don't need to open the lid and push them down. Other than that, I can keep my hand as steady as possible and then I can watch. Right? So you can watch, you can practice with me. So when you continue to watch, you will see that each and every particle slowly get sedimented with the time. So certain particles will get sedimented so fast, certain particles will take time, but with the time, if you keep your hand steady, almost all the particles will get sedimented. So that is the nature of your mind as well. Now, when you are unmindful, angry or driven by emotions. You are overwhelmed by your emotions and thoughts. There are so much of thoughts. But if you look at those thoughts in a non-judgmental way or in an opinionless way, thought just as a thought, you will see that the stream of thought slowly subsides and they just vanished. You don't need to forcefully. Now, the general thing that we used to do is that when there are so much of thoughts in our mind, we try to do something else. We try to read a book, we try to, sing a song or listen to something, we try to watch a video or something like that. It's basically trying to suppress our thoughts, which is not working. It's like you take a rubber ball and you're trying to keep under the water, but no sooner you take your hand, the ball will come. But instead of that, mindfulness is something where you cultivate the quality called or a skill called non-judgmental awareness. So that is where you will be able to see things as they are. And you look at the things without your emotions. And when you see your thoughts, your thinking or your stream of thoughts non-judgmentally, what would happen is that the stream of thought slowly subsides and they just vanish, and you always come back to the present moment. So how do you know that you are mindful? Because you started feeling the particular posture. If you are sitting, you started feeling your weight on the chair and your the way in which your legs are keeping. If you are walking, you started feeling you are walking. And if you're talking, you know that you are talking. Have you heard that there are some people are telling that I got angry and I didn't know what has happened, because you have been overwhelmed by your emotions. But if you continue to practice mindfulness, it will not happen. So the last message that I want to share with you all before we winding up is that if you continue to practice mindfulness, you will gain a status where you will be able to maintain your mind always in the present moment, which will lead you to a situation called peak performance. Because why we become mediocre is that we let our minds to wander, and there are so much of distractions and negative emotions. But if you are mindful and if you're capable of maintaining your mind always in the present moment, you become a peak performer, and irrespective of the external environment or disturbance, you will be very peaceful. So I just want to share this thought with you before the closure. An entire sea of water can't sink a ship unless it gets inside the ship. Similarly, the negativity of the world can't put you down unless you allow it to get inside. If you are not mindful, if you are unmindful, you will be letting the negativity to come inside. So in that case, the size of the ship doesn't matter. You know what happens to Titan. So you will be, it got sink. But if you are mindful, if you practice mindfulness, you will maintain your mind always in the present moment. And whatever the negativity surrounding you will not be having an impact. So that is the true nature of the mindfulness. So with that, let me invite you all to get into the journey of practicing mindfulness. So if you need more information about how to practice mindfulness and all these things, just check my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and just type Sanath Mahawithanage and you can find my YouTube channel. There are more videos, there are more techniques that you can practice, more tools that you can practice, and further information about my 8-week models you can find. But more than that, I have given you very simple. This is very simple, but very very profound, where you can practice mindfulness. So in conclusion, we discussed the negative aspects of stress, and then we understood mindfulness as a tool or a technique to manage stress. And then finally, we discuss that there are three ways in which we can practice mindfulness. The first thing is that attend to your work, practice mindfulness while attending to your day-to-day works, like brushing your teeth, having your breakfast, etc. And second thing is that the structured way of practice, that is mindful sitting and mindful walking. And the third one is that use something like tools like Tibetan singing bowl, and there are so much of other techniques that you can find in the internet. So those are the three ways. So you can use a combination of all these three methods and practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is not end results. It is basically a way of living. It's something like a skill that you can master. If you master that skill, you can see wonders happen. So with that, thank you very much for listening to me, and let's join the journey that is called mindfulness.